Hello and welcome back to the Find Your Peak Fitness podcast. I'm your coach and host, Megan Morensky, and today I'm going to talk about a topic that is often overlooked. Most people know how to lose fat, but what does it actually feel like when you're in a fat loss phase? So I'm going to talk to you what to expect. This is great to know before you enter a fat loss phase, if this is your first ever time trying to lose weight or lose body fat. These are all great things to know. First and foremost, I'm going to talk about how to actually get there. So I'm going to take you through how to get there and then what it actually feels like and how do we know if we're in a fat loss phase. So for those of you that don't know, a fat loss phase is a period of time where you're in a calorie deficit, which means you are burning more than you're consuming. You want to aim for a small deficit in order to preserve that muscle mass. So anytime that we are in too large of a deficit, we risk losing muscle. So if you find that you're losing more than a pound per week, typically that comes from muscle. If it's week over week, the first phase or the first week, you may lose more than a pound. That's fine. A lot of it will be water weight. But if you're continuously losing more than a pound, and it depends on the person, but typically that is too much and you will be losing muscle in the process. So you want to aim for a small deficit to preserve that muscle. Like I said, this deficit depends on your goals, the time frame, and also your starting body fat percentage. Those of you that have larger frames or more body fat percentages to lose, you may find that your weekly average loss will be higher, and vice versa. If you're someone who's leaner and carries less body fat, you may need more time. If you have no time restriction, that's even better. If you're in no rush to lose the body fat, that is a great place to be. Anytime that we're rushed into doing something, especially when it comes to our bodies, it never really has good results. So if you have a wedding coming up or a holiday you want to kind of get beach ready for, make sure you give yourself plenty time. None of this 30 pounds in 30 days bullcrap. You need plenty of time to do it properly. That way you can preserve the muscle and get that quote unquote toned look that everyone was looking for. In order to be in a deficit, this means you're in a calorie deficit, as in less than your maintenance. So if you're someone that you maintain your current body physique at, say, 2,000 calories, if you consume 1,800 calories in a day, that's you in a 200 calorie deficit. If you went the other way and if you were consuming 2,200 calories in a day, you're in a 200 calorie surplus. So the bigger the deficit, the more weight you'll lose. However, anything where it's too large of a deficit, like I said, you risk losing that muscle. So make sure that if this is your first time doing it, start with a small deficit. Okay, so how do we know if we're in one? So I'm going to talk about little tricks and hacks you can use to track your progress. First things first is scale weight. Now, many of you probably will not enjoy looking at the scale, and that's okay. Some of you, it may not even affect you at all. But the scale is a good way to gauge our total body mass. And I want to emphasize that it is our total body mass. It does not dictate the body fat percentage. I know there are scales out there that do this, or you can go for a DEXA scan or an in-body scan, but there is still a room for error. The scale weight is, like I said, it's a good tool, but it doesn't give us the overall picture of what's going on. If you are in a deficit, but you consume more fluids that day, or if you're sleeping poorly, or if you're stressed out, you may weigh in more the next day. And that's because your body's holding on to like inflammation, sodium, water weight, all that good stuff. So it's a good tool, but it does not dictate exactly how our progress is going. When it comes to tracking body fat loss, a rule of thumb is 0.5 pound to 1 pound per week, so of a loss. Anything, like I said, anything more than that, week over week, you may want to check and see what's actually going on and if you're in too large of a calorie deficit. But this is a good rule of thumb, the 0.5 pound to 1 pound per week. Another tool is using measurements. And this is something I've recently started doing a little bit more with my clients, because measurements gives us the circumference of what we're measuring. So taking measurements of your calves, your quads, your hips, your waist, your chest, and your arms. And some people do their neck. I'm not huge. I've never really taken someone's measurements around their neck, but you can. But this just gives us a good tool to use if you do come to doubt yourself, you see that scale weight not budging, you may plateau, or you may even increase in the scale weight. And if you're training hard, you'll find your measurements will actually decrease because muscle weighs more than fat. So you can actually get leaner while the scale weight doesn't even budge or may even go up. That's why it's such a good tool to use. It kind of gives us another insight into what's really, really going on before we make changes solely based off the scale weight. Another form of measuring what's kind of going on is paying attention to how your clothes are fitting. Again, this is a good tool to use if you find that your scale weight is not budging, but your clothes are fitting better, or you've gone down a belt buckle or a belt loop, then things are working the way you're supposed to. Just ditch the scale for a little bit. Another tool is hunger. So a lot of us, me myself included, it's uncomfortable to feel hungry. However, I encourage my clients to know that hunger is normal. It's a large part of the process. I never want my clients or anyone else out there to be totally ravenous. If you find that you're really, really starving, you may be in too large of a calorie deficit. So hunger is normal, but ravenous, you don't really want to be there. Okay? So paying attention to your hunger signals. Like I said, if you're hungry, it's normal. Just acknowledge it. It's there. It's not going away. And just tell yourself, hey, I am in a calorie deficit. I'm burning body fat. My body's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. I know a lot of people don't like it, and it's an uncomfortable feeling, and we're in a society where we can pretty much get food whenever and wherever. But our bodies have mechanisms in place where we can actually survive dealing with hunger. We can be hungry and we will not die. So it's very much more a mind over matter situation. A few things that can help with hunger is making sure you're staying hydrated, so drinking plenty of water. If I find that I'm really hungry even after I consume a meal, even though I'm not actually hungry, I just, I could just eat more, I'll chug like a bottle of water and that fills me up. And I'm like, actually, do you know what? I'm not even not hungry anymore. It kind of goes away. Another tool that I use is having things like sparkling water where there's 0 calories in it. If it's after dinner, I'll brush my teeth. And another tool is chewing gum. A lot of our hunger signals can be quite misleading. A lot of it comes from us being bored. We think we're hungry, but we're just bored. And I've definitely been there. And sometimes you just got to get up and do something. A little tool that I kind of tell myself, if I'm truly hungry, I will go have a bowl of broccoli. If it's true hunger, I will go have a bowl of steamed broccoli, just plain steamed broccoli. And when I ask myself that, I'm like, do I want a bowl of steamed broccoli? I'm like, no, I really don't want that. That's how I know I'm not hungry, I'm just bored. Like I said, if you were truly hungry, you'd pretty much eat anything. So a few little tips there for you that you can apply. I use these quite a lot. The biggest one being I make sure I stay hydrated all the time. And I do find sparkling water helps me. The next thing is looking at your aesthetics. So this is your physique. And what this can be done, or how this can be done, is through progress photos. And again, this is a tool I use with my clients. Taking progress photos every 6 to 8 to 10 weeks, depending on their progress and depending on what their goals are. But what this does, it provides a snapshot of what's going on. And photos do not lie. It's very easy to get confused with what's going on if we look at the scale weight or if we base off how we feel. And feel versus really are two different things. You have those days where you feel fat or you feel big or you feel bloated, but it doesn't give us a true representation of exactly what's going on. I often feel like this once a month. All of a sudden I feel kind of icky and just bloated. Even though the scale weight is still moving, I don't feel that great. But I take my progress photos and I'm like, yes, I can absolutely see the progress that I'm making. So, like I said, it gives us a good snapshot and it's great to look back on as well. I love it, looking back on my progress, but also clients' progress and like, this is where you were 3 months ago, this is where you were 6 months ago, and seeing that visual progression, there's no filter on it. It's just, this is what you were and this is what you are now. And it almost like reignites that spark of motivation. And it's, like I said, it's a good tool to use. The scale doesn't lie, but either do the photos. I know this can be quite uncomfortable for people. So it's one of those things you can do yourself. I always tell my clients, I'm like, if you want to share it with me, you can. I do encourage them to, because it is a good tool to have someone outside or not, that's not yourself, looking at your photos. It's very easy to get emotionally attached to what we do, and also you will view your progress photos totally different than I would view them. Okay, so it's good to have an outside perspective and someone to look at them and be like, look at how your quads are getting more defined, your shoulders are growing, or whatever the case may be. But looking at them side by side and being able to compare, but also having someone outside your circle or a coach that can help you assess your progression. The last thing is tracking your metrics. So it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, I feel hungry more often, or I notice like my libido's low, or I get brain fog. But actually putting numbers to that, even though they're not totally inaccurate, it's based off our own observations and how we feel. It's good to be like look back and be like, okay, I do notice that I do feel hungry, and you actually have a scale to that. So what I mean by this is I get my clients to track their sleep, so just putting in how many hours they're in bed, their energy levels, their hunger levels, and also their stress levels. And it's a scale of 1 to 5. So there's no really, there's not a database out there where you can track that I feel exactly at a 1 today. This is my own metrics I just made up. It's something I do with my own coach as well. But it just allows us for data points for our subjective experiences. Like I said, scale weight, that's objective. It's how much your total body mass is. But how we feel, there's not really a scale where we can measure that accurately. But this subjective scale that I've given to my clients, it allows us to kind of look at it, and it also makes you more self-aware as well. So moving on, so what should we expect when we're in a fat loss phase? And like I said, this is often overlooked by a lot of people. There's so much data and strategies out there on how to lose fat, and arguably there's only one, calories in versus calories out. If someone is out there and they've managed to sway the laws of thermodynamics, please let me know. That was a joke, but just so you know, the laws of thermodynamics do not change. It's calories in versus calories out. Now, there's a better way to go about things, making sure you're eating high protein to preserve that muscle, strength training, again, to build muscle or preserve that muscle, and also to being whole foods, so your take goes out of it, you're actually hitting or getting a certain amount of nutrients in to help your overall health, okay? But going back to what should we expect, as what I've mentioned, the first thing is hunger. So hunger is a normal part of the process. It's just like if you try to stay up, past your bedtime, you start to feel sleepy. Feeling sleepy is normal. It's a natural body response that we should rest. Hunger is the exact same. It's a survival mechanism. It tells us we should eat. However, like I said, in our society, hunger can also be swayed by a lot of things. There's also very highly palatable foods out there that make us think that we are hungry when really we just need to take a nap or drink some water. So hunger is by far the first one on what you should expect. Depending on how extreme you go in your calorie deficit, this hunger scale will range, or how long you're in a calorie deficit for. For example, if you are in your first week of being in a calorie deficit, providing that you're only in a small deficit, your hunger will be pretty minimal. If you are in your 12th week of a deficit, you may be feeling a bit more hungry than what you were in the first week. So it depends on the person, it depends on their psychology, it depends on their body type, it depends on their history with food. But it's a very, very normal part of the process, and from my own experience, it's definitely much mind over matter. If you can find little strategies that can help with your hunger, but also selecting certain foods that will help with this. Like I said, eating high protein to help with your satiety signals, which means it'll keep you fuller for longer, and having more whole healthy foods that are low in calorie but high in volume is such a game changer. This is something that I do. If you follow me on Instagram, typically I post most of my meals if I can remember, but I love to eat high volume, low calorie things such as egg whites, so I'll add that to my eggs in the morning. I'll also do, right now I'm absolutely loving cauliflower rice. I have half a bag and sometimes even a bag for dinner, and I'll mix that with like a ton of veggies and some chicken, and I'll do like salad leaves on the side, and my plate is absolutely full, and very rarely do I go over 500 calories. Those are probably my two favorite ones, but fruits and veggies are so underrated when it comes to dieting. Things like protein bars aren't the best because for the amount of calories that are in that bar is pretty high. And personally, I do not feel that full after a protein bar. I would much rather have something more low calorie and volume dense than a protein bar. So things like Greek yogurt, that's another one that I use a ton. It's high in protein, high volume, it fills me up, plus I'm getting nutrients. In relation to hunger is food focus. Now, this is a weird one. So I didn't really start to experience this until pretty late on in one of my first ever cuts. And what food focus is, it's kind of in the title, you focus way more on food. Even after you eat, you're thinking about food. Maybe at night or when you're kind of doing nothing, you start to think about food. Time between meals, you finish a meal and you're thinking about the next meal. Typically this happens later on in a cut, or it's a good signal to say like, hey, like if this happens early on, maybe increase your calories a little bit more. But again, food focus, especially once you get to a certain body fat percentage, so this typically occurs in lower body fat percentages, is that, like I said, that focus on food. I often will experience this when my day isn't so busy, so maybe on a Saturday when I'm not working, and I find myself kind of thinking about that next meal, although it's not too loud right now, but I do know at one point when I'm getting stage ready that it probably will be a little bit louder. But again, it's just our body's natural response telling us to eat. It's also a normal part of the process. So it's kind of tied into that hunger. This is more like in the psychology realm of things, that your brain is telling you to eat. Typically this happens when you're in a low body fat percentage and your body is just craving food. No matter, even if you've just had a meal, and you're thinking about that next meal. It's a very normal thing to do, but it was something that took me by surprise, and I didn't actually know what it was until I went through it. And then I remember, this was years ago, Googling, I can't stop thinking about food. And it's a very normal part of the process. Like I said, this typically happens when you're deep in a cut. But just something to be aware of, it's something that took me by surprise. That's why I kind of put it in here, because some of you may not know that, but this is a very, very normal part of the process. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It is absolutely a normal response to cutting. The next thing, and again, this is something I experience, is a drop in body temperature. And again, this is something that I didn't know until I experienced it. But when you get to a certain body fat percentage, you will have less insulation. So our body fat is our protective layer that keeps us safe, that keeps us warm. And when you decrease that, of course, you're going to feel a little bit colder. I'm sure everyone has that one friend who's like stick thin, like all year round, but they're always cold. And this is a sign of low body fat percentage. Now, when our body fat percentages drop too low, this can be very detrimental to our health. Some people are just leaner, even though they eat a lot, but they're just leaner, and they often feel cold because they've got less fat protecting their bodies and keeping them warm. But if you're someone that's on a weight loss journey or a fat loss journey, you may start to experience changes in your body temperature. The next one is low energy. Now, this is very normal. If you think about it, calories provide us energy. Calories are energy. Now, when you're in a calorie deficit, you're not consuming as much food, therefore your energy output will decrease. Now, there are different mechanisms that go into our energy output. One of these mechanisms is called NEAT, so that's non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that is the calories you burn from just going about your day. It's the calories you burn from cleaning, it's the calories you burn from brushing your teeth, or if you're someone that fidgets. Right now I am gesturing a ton to this microphone and I'm burning calories as I do it. I'm not thinking about doing it, I'm just doing it. It's anything that you do that is not designated exercise. So NEAT is not going on the treadmill for 30 minutes or looking at your calories burned or going for a walk or getting steps in. It's about general activity. If you sit there and you're kind of shaking your leg, you're bunching your leg up and down, or like I said, gestures, someone that fidgets, that's your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, when we consume less calories and we have less energy input, it's amazing our energy output decreases on its own. Okay, so you may experience this when you're full of energy, full of calories, and you're feeling good. You're talking quicker, you engage more. You may be fidgeting, you may walk around as you're brushing your teeth, but as you get more into a calorie deficit, your energy output just throughout the day just gradually decreases. Someone may even recognize it in you as you just sound more mellow. Okay, It's very, very common. Like I said, it's a very normal part of the process. You're consuming less energy, so your energy output will decrease. The last thing I want to touch base on is your decrease in libido. So libido is your hormones. So when we consume less calories, the calories that we do consume are going to go to priorities, such as our heart beating, our digestion, and even like our cognitive function. That was ironic because I just got brain fog there. But our cognitive function. One of the first things that goes if we're in a big calorie deficit is our muscle mass, but it's also our drop in hormone production and regulation. This is why females typically, or sometimes, will lose their menstrual cycle when they're in low body fat percentages, or when they're in a deficit for a period of time, their menstrual cycle gets more spaced out and almost like less intense, which is obviously a perk, but it's also means our hormones are kind of down-regulated. So when our hormones are down-regulated, our ability to produce is obviously low. We're not kind of in a highly fertile state. And also our libido, so our sex drive, is also decreased. And this is very common. A lot of people don't know this, but it is a very, very common side effect of being a low body fat percentage. A lot of us underestimate the amazing ability that the human body has. When we don't fuel it, there's trade-offs for everything, and our body's going to do that as well. It's going to find a way to operate as highly optimized as possible on the calories you give it. So if you're underfeeding it for a long time, then yes, it is going to start operating at the calories you feed it at. Deficits are not bad. That is what you need to lose fat. However, they should never be taken to extreme unless you are competing. And even when you are competing, you should only be in a low body fat percentage for a short period of time. That's why when people get stage lean, it's a pretty short space. They're kind of in and out, and they need to get their body back to normal as quick as possible. If you are someone that wants to lose body fat but you don't know where to start, then please feel free to reach out. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Like I said, it's a skill. It's not a diet that's out there that's going to give you your 30-pound loss. You need to have the skills in place, the tools in place that are going to get you the true results that you want. And typically most of us do not want to lose muscle mass in the process. You want to lose as much body fat as you can without dipping into that muscle mass. So if you need to get additional guidance with this, please reach out. I'd be more than happy to help. It's amazing what can be done when you have someone with the knowledge and experience in your corner supporting you every step of the way. I have my own coach, despite being in the industry myself. I know I need someone with a little bit more experience than me to get me to my goals. So if you do need help, please reach out. If you have any questions, you can DM me on Instagram, or you can also comment below. Hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you next week.